investment destination for investors. Equity-oriented funds received a staggering net inflow of 1.64 lakh crore rupees in 21-22. So will FY23 be another year, a lucky year for the mutual fund industry and for investors of mutual funds? Where would you park your money in this new financial year? Well, we've got all of that covered for you and more on the show today. Prableen Bajpai joining us from FinFix Research and Analysis to take us through all that you should be doing for your savings and investment plan as you head into a new financial year. This is something that's important for all of us, Prableen. So, timing-wise, is this the right time to take a closer look? What should one be focusing on this time around? What are the essentials? And what kind of goals should one have when looking at their savings portfolio?
Hi, Aabha. Great to be here. You just talked about the timing, and I'm so happy that we're having this conversation in the first month of the financial year rather than the last month of the financial year, especially because I think it's so over-concentrated with everybody looking at doing their last-minute tax savings. So I think this is the perfect time, and a lot of reasons for that. This is the time of the year when individuals are getting their bonuses. Yeah. There is increment in salaries. Freshness is there because, of course, we've entered the new financial year. So it is the time to, take a look at what is your income now, the new income that the person is getting. What are your particular, expenses which have been ongoing in the previous year, and if there is an increase in them. Do you have any new goals? So you have to go back and reevaluate your financial goals as well. Secondly, Aabha, I think it is also a great time to look at your debt portfolio. If you have a home loan, if you have a car loan, go see if somebody is looking at paying up the loans during the financial year, especially high interest rate products such as credit card loans and personal loans. I think that should be one of the priorities before you actually start to restructure your investments. So looking at your all sorts of debt and loans on an individual. Another thing here is very crucial. This is also the time to check your essentials. Essentials are including your emergency corpus, your life covers, and your health plans. Usually, if an individual is getting a bonus, it is easier to set aside, a sum to sort of set up your emergency corpus if it wasn't existing. So I think from that point of view, it is a great time. Tax planning, again, this is the perfect time to relook at that. And tax planning, I think, is a very, very integral and a very important component of your overall financial planning. Because a small contribution of 1,50,000 a year can actually give you in a span of 35 years, can give you a corpus of about 7 crores if you're using the right instruments. So it can actually sort of cater to a bigger goal that you have set for yourself, let's say 60% of your retirement basket, or something else, which is those many years away. And finally, I feel what happens is that over a period of time, as we keep earning, our lifestyle changes and our expenses increase, and unknowingly, the expenditure basket that we have keeps on increasing, but we usually don't go and check that. And with every increment in salary, there is a little lifestyle modification. You probably are shopping more, you're traveling abroad, maybe instead of travel twice abroad, maybe it's thrice a year. So I feel that with every increment in salary, it is so crucial to set aside an incremental amount of investment as well. And that little, even 1,000 increment every year that you make, I think can really cater to that increase in your lifestyle expenses.
So how should one look at asset allocation in order to make the most of some of the concessions available? Is it primarily fund focused? If so, what kind of funds should one look at as well when thinking of building their portfolio?
So I feel, Aabha, this is personal finance is so personal, and the best way to look at is define your own financial goals. It is almost like if I need to go to the market, I should know that, okay, the market is a kilometer away. Do I want to drive down to the market or just walk down to the market? So when you know that what is your final objective, it becomes very easy to choose the right product, which can enable the individual to actually meet the objective and reach their financial goals. So for financial goals such as retirement, which usually would, which are long-term goals, I would suggest that, the equity component of your portfolio has to be higher. Of course, supplemented with good products such as the employee provident fund. But of course, we've seen a little cut in the interest rates there as well. And one is investing for something in the near term or medium term, then of course the preservation component becomes a priority. Maybe the person doesn't want to take too much of risk. So there, the combination of a debt product, a fixed income product, can be in higher proportion as compared to equities. And that's how you sort of set up your overall asset allocation. And of course, your own comfort, because your risk appetite is very, very crucial here in defining what is your comfort zone and where do you find peace? Because if somebody is investing out of their comfort zone, I think, they would make those sort of uncalled for exits and they won't stick through the journey, especially in equities. So it's very important to have a overall asset allocation based investment chart for yourself, but considering all these factors.
So run us through what the core and satellite approach is in a portfolio for those that are not familiar with it, how it works and what the advantages are.
So because we just spoke about the risk appetite of an individual, I feel, Aabha, here what's important is that we define our overall portfolio into two baskets, which is one is your core. Core is that basket of your portfolio wherein you're having products which match your own risk appetite. So if I'm a conservative investor, my core would be probably products like a public provident fund, employee provident fund, more of fixed income products. And then my satellite would be something where I can take slightly higher risk. So for a conservative investor, their core 60 to 70 or 80% would be these, traditional fixed income sort of products. And that probably 15-20% is something where they're looking at higher returns and they can step outside the comfort zone and invest, which would be part equity or a combination of equity and debt. While it would be the other way for an investor who's aggressive, and for them, the core would be, mostly equities. And within equities, the core ideally should be simpler products. Within equities, it can be formed of index funds, exposure to large cap index funds, mid caps. I think we have so many good passive strategies now coming in India, and even exposure to outside India. Okay. And for them, their satellite would be simpler products, probably in the fixed income space.
Okay. When investing, what is the kind of investment horizon one should look at? And also corpus, would you suggest putting aside 20% of your income? Would you say it's okay to invest even the most nominal sum, let's say through an SIP route? And, let's address perhaps a retail investor first, and we can always come to other segments after that. But for a regular investor, and if you could define perhaps via an income bracket, what would be a reasonable corpus to suggest investing in with, let's say, a medium to long-term horizon?
So I feel, Aabha, if we're just looking at international investing currently, then this segment can be about anywhere ranging between 5 to 20 to 25% also, depending on the goals of the investor. Okay. Because if, let's say, somebody has a kid who's just about 1 year old and they do plan to send their child abroad for further studies, so 17 years later, they would be paying the fee in dollars. So I think for them, maybe the allocation outside India can be higher, maybe even 25 to 30%. Okay. But of course, the element and the underlying nature of stock markets remains the same, whether we are investing in Indian equity markets or outside India. So that must be remembered. And, that is something which investors have to be very cautious about. That yes, it's not that if you're investing outside India, then there is no risk or there won't be volatility. That will be there. And I think this year beginning, we've seen already a lot of volatility and drawdowns a bit even in the US markets. And otherwise speaking broadly, general investments, then I would say that, a small corpus, a small sum of, let's say, 10,000 SIP Aabha over a 15-year period through mutual funds can actually create a basket for them for about 50 lakhs or 15-year period, considering a 12% return. And I think 10,000 is a reasonable amount, which probably even young kids of today who just started working, and a lot of people can afford to invest. And this little amount, if they do this increment of, let's say, this year my monthly SIP is 10,000, and the next year onwards it's 11,000, and hence it's 12,000. That can actually create a corpus of about 96 lakhs in the same time period. So investment up to about 25 to 30% of their salary, I think, is a great thing. Loans shouldn't be too much, I feel. That has to be contained as well. Even if you're not investing, it shouldn't be that let me invest and take a home loan to buy a house to save taxes. That approach would be wrong.
All right, Prableen, thank you so much for joining us and for that comprehensive view on how to look at your savings and investments as we kickstart a new financial year. Thanks for being with us on Business Today.
Thanks so much, Aabha. Thank you.
Let's take a very quick break. On the other side, my colleague Sakshi Batra will get you an exclusive conversation with Surya Bhatia, financial advisor and managing partner, asset managers, who will give you the top investment ideas for FY23 and tips and tricks to manage your personal finance.
Since I met you, I've been trying to fight it. Since I met you, I've been trying to hide it. You and I are the same kind, like a story we are bound. You know me and I know you. We are the same, but how so true? Two different lives are much the same. All we have are different names. I'm singing yours just like a song. It's like you knew me all along.
You are watching India Today.
The idea of Russia being great without Ukraine seems impossible. If Beijing decides that this is the new alignment, then you do have a much larger global struggle. So what will really happen now is the battle in the East will determine the fate of this war. We are in, I think, for a prolonged phase of deglobalization, of regionalization, a world in which politics trumps economics.
Well, the new financial year has kick-started, and perhaps there is no better time than now to start thinking about what you can do to start this year off on the right financial footing. So what will this year be like for money and for investing? What are the options and investment products to keep in mind, and how should you really go about creating your personal finance portfolio? To answer these questions and many, many more, I have with me a very special guest joining in. Mr. Surya Bhatia joins in. He's the financial advisor and managing partner at Asset Managers. Thank you so much, Mr. Bhatia, for taking the time out. Appreciate you joining in. So let me just start asking you, and by saying that, while we keep asking everyone around us to plan their finances, but for somebody who is just starting out, it can be an extremely daunting task to make a financial plan. And the biggest stumbling block perhaps is where exactly should one begin? And what is the right way to begin financial planning for, say, FY23? What would you say?
The basic essence of any financial planning does not change with the change of the financial year. Actually, if you ask me, it's very boring. The basic principles continues to remain the same. You have to follow the basic modules of financial investments, financial planning year on year. And if you are able to do that, I think your job is done. Yeah. Very basic essences of your financial investments or planning is to start early. And nothing early can be even the start of the financial year. So as we are in the month of April, I think everyone needs to gear up to ensure that they put their maths in order, ensure their cash flows are in order, and they put their investments in the right space. There is no point starting at the fag end of the year, which could also be start of the calendar year, mind you. So it's up to you how you really want to take this up. But yes, saving is very important. Keeping the money idle in the bank, if you ask me, is criminal. You should not keep your money in the banks. That's saving, that's not investment. And why people say it's a very thin line, there's actually a very, very big difference in the two. And with the inflation, what it is as of now, everyone knows, it's eating up your principal, it's eating up your corpus. You have to ensure that you are able to save your investments in the right order so that you're able to protect your inflation in the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the outset, you've given a very clear demarcation between savings and investments, and perhaps that's where one needs to start off with identifying what is your saving, how much should you be really saving, and that strong statement coming in there that putting money in banks is perhaps criminal and it will not help you save for your financial goals. So when I'm talking about financial goals, I want to ask you about this. A lot of us really think of big ticket items, say like retirement planning or buying a house. A lot of things in between are actually forgotten. So could you share with all our viewers what all actually can be really considered as a financial goal, and how does one really assign the realistic value to each of our goals?
See, that's where we actually miss out. We always say that we need to really plan for a big financial goal to start saving. But why is that? Anything which is small by nature, which doesn't cost me a bomb, and that's very relative for everyone, I need to put that into perspective and start saving towards that. If I create, let's say, a corpus for a child, and if we do, let's say, a child training program, for them, planning for long term does not make sense. Maybe just buying the next sneaker for them is something which really they look forward for. That's their big goal. So the big goal will depend on a person to person. What do you really want? And you need to save towards that. And the early the habit you start creating in your own self is what will really help you in the long term to create that disciplined approach. And that's what we actually find lacking in most of the investors. Everyone talks about creating wealth, about multiplying your money. But have you ever thought how you will even meet your next goal? If you are able to do justice to that, and if you are able to start early in life, I think half or maybe more of your problems will actually get solved. So please don't look at the big goals to take care of your from your expenses. Start small and start saving. Even if you don't have a goal per se, start saving. It's your money. You will spend the money when you want the money. So please start saving.
Yeah. What about gold? How optimistic are you on gold, which has been traditionally a very big asset where most of our, parents and families have always invested in and still believe in doing so because it is a physical asset. You have some control of it. You have it at your home, at your disposal whenever you want to do it. And it's always seen as an emergency option, as a hedge against inflation as well. How are you looking at this basket of gold, and, how should new age investors really approach gold now?
See, gold as an intrinsic value, there is actually none. You don't have any intrinsic value in gold. So why will gold really do well? When you really see the other asset classes around you, the global environment around you is not conducive to investments. So classic example is 2020, when the pandemic came into play, and that's when next few months gold really did very, very well. But once that was over, gold actually became a very flat investment strategy. There is no harm in having gold, to answer you what you are asking. But you should not have gold as more than 5 to 7% of your overall asset classes to your portfolio. But mind you, in a country like ours, gold is one thing which is embedded in you. That's what we all have been born and kind of brought up.
Yeah.
We have gold in the form with our families, in the form of jewelry, in the form of coins. So the overall kitty to gold should not exceed 5 to 7%. And also, jewelry is not a form of investment. So please, when we talk to many people, many investors, do look at gold, but look at gold. The best kind of investment in a gold is actually sovereign gold bonds, because they give you the 2.5% extra guaranteed return and are also tax-free at maturity. Yes, it comes with a caveat of a lock-in of an 8-year.
Yeah.
So, but if you look at gold as an investment strategy, then yes, sovereign gold bonds is the way to go for.
Okay, sovereign gold bonds, the best way to invest in gold in FY23 perhaps, and jewelry is still not considered as an investment perhaps at your disposal, but not an investment option for a lot of things like making charges and other things that get added on and definitely create some kind of an impact on your financial returns on gold for sure. You talked about taxes, so let me take that point forward. A lot of us do invest to save taxes, say under options available under Section 80C. But usually one tends to postpone these investments till the end of March when we are actually in a rush to file our taxes and returns. Could you share with us why is it perhaps essential for investors to really look at these investments like PPF, ELSS, other options available under ATC at the beginning of the year instead?
See, definitely you get the benefit of compounding. That's besides the tax advantage it offers you. Yeah. The tax arbitrage it comes with also adds an extra zing of return to your portfolio. So if a PPF you're doing as investment come with a, let's say, 7.1% tax-free return, and it also gives you that extra 50,000 of tax saving, that's something which kind of increases your net yield in your hands. Likewise, an ELSS, equity linked savings schemes, is a pure equity basket. But again, coming with a tax advantage, it helps your overall return. So doing that at the fag end of the financial year, you lose out the first 10 months, 11 months, which you could have saved, because you do have to do that saving in that fiscal year. So if you know that you will be pushed to do that, and what happens in the last months of the financial year, you may not be having that cash in hand. So you will be scrambling to pick up cash. And in that process, you may not be in a position to do the right investment. And because of paucity of time, you may be missold something. That's something which you need to avoid. And to ensure that you are able to do the job rightly, you can even think of doing a monthly investment, which also does not put burden on your cash flows. So if you have to do let's say, for example, the limit is 1.5 lakhs. Yeah. If I talk about ATC, then you can even start doing 12,500 rupees per month for the next 12 months, starting April of this year. And you don't hit your cash flows beyond a point, instead of taking out 1.5 lakhs at the end of the March of next year.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And for all the investors out there, this definitely makes a lot of sense to actually not put so much burden also onto your cash flows. Perhaps a SIP way, like you do for your investments, for your tax saving investments as well. You can, have the same approach and perhaps achieve the same goal and start from the very beginning. And please review your investments as well, as and when your tax brackets also keep changing. That's also an important point to keep in mind. Now, you did talk about mutual funds, which is your favorite topic. So let me take that point forward as well. We are seeing a huge rise in the new investors coming on board, investing in mutual funds. The latest data are talking about SIPs crossing that 12,000 odd crore rupees mark in a month. So definitely very, very encouraging numbers being seen there. But when it comes to mutual funds, for all those new investors who want to kickstart, there is a lot of confusion. So many mutual funds, so many categories to choose from. So how does one really begin by picking the best fund? And is there something called as the best fund at all? And or would you say that perhaps choosing any fund but staying for long is the key? How would you really identify the best way to approaching mutual funds?
See, there is no concept of a best fund.
Okay.
If you see the performance of the funds every day, there is no new number one, if I say so.
Okay.
So picking up the best of the fund, I think is what you need to choose out from here is which fund house or which fund is actually in the top quartile performance consistently over the last few years. That's how you need to pick up and choose. But before you even go to that stage, you need to identify, as I just said earlier, what are the kind of investment baskets you carry. Do you want to plan for investments for a short term, for a medium term, or a long term? Depending on the basket of the investment which you want to provide for, you have to pick and choose your investment. And it is not about mutual funds. If you need a short-term money in the current environment, you may be even happy to do a simple bank recurring deposit. So you have to determine that which investment asset class will fit your profile. Yes, long term, we always say look at equity as an asset class subject to your risk profile, having a tolerance level to add equity to your portfolio. But subject to that, you can always start with maybe an index fund if you want to look at equity. But before you even go that path, you want to test waters, you want to test equity, you may even look at hybrid funds. That could really give you a flavor of the equity markets before you really dwell into deep waters.
Well, okay. On that note, thank you so much, Surya, for sharing these wonderful insights with all our viewers. Always a pleasure speaking with you on Business Today.
Artemis 1 is NASA's effort for an unmanned mission to the moon's surface. Block 1, the basic version of the Space Launch System, is NASA's heavy launcher. At its top is the Orion spacecraft. Orion goes into orbit around the Earth. It is the immediate cryogenic propulsion stage that will give Orion the big thrust needed to leave the Earth's orbit and head for the moon. To navigate in space, Orion will be powered by a service module that also generates air and water for astronauts on future missions. Orion will approach around 100 kilometers from the moon and will take advantage of its gravitational force to reach a distant orbit at about 70,000 kilometers from the moon between 6 to 19 days. Once Orion's performance has been analyzed, the module will head back to Earth, taking advantage of the moon's gravitational pull. NASA will conduct scientific experiments in deep space with several nanosatellites deployed during this mission. If the results of this mission are validated, it will be followed by the Artemis 2 mission, which will carry 4 astronauts around the moon on board the Orion spacecraft.
You are watching.
For them, the idea of Russia being great without Ukraine seems impossible. If Beijing decides that this is the new alignment, then you do have a much larger global struggle. So what will really happen now is the battle in the East will determine the fate of this war. We are in, I think, for a prolonged phase of deglobalization, of regionalization, a world in which politics trumps economics.
We are in the front line, not because it's just our job. It is our duty to tell you the story as it unfolds, brave, fearlessly, relentlessly, and we'll do it at any cost. This is Mosmi Singh with video journalist Parminder Sharma reporting from war zone Mykolaiv, Ukraine for India Today.
Grounded in journalism, on the ground reporting. Only on India Today TV.
Presented by Ebix Cash.